Hi there. Let's talk about typography for a minute, and let's talk about what separates the pros from the amateurs, let's say. Graphic design is my passion, or so you might think, but just because it's your passion doesn't necessarily mean it's something you're good at, right? As with, as with most things, your enthusiasm or your passion for something doesn't necessarily translate to quality. So there are a few things that kind of set us apart and help us understand the difference between good and, let's say, bad typography. Typography is an essential element in good graphic design. You can't get around it. All designers need to have a good understanding of when, where, and why to use type and how to make it effective in their advertisements and their visual communication. So, who cares about type? We do. The average person, I think, pretty much goes around ignoring type. They may respond to it, they may relate to it, but they don't really have an opinion about it. But when you ask the question, who cares about type? We do. It's important to us. We do pay attention. When we see something that we like, we love it. When we see something we don't like, we hate it, and we have an opinion about it, and that's okay. So let's take a look at some of these particulars that stand out to us that may or may not stand out to others. Do you care about fonts? If you do care about fonts and when they're used and why they're used, you're definitely a graphic designer. Here's what I mean. Do you care if people use papyrus? Do you notice it? Is it like someone scratching a chalkboard when you see it? Does it bother you? Do you go, ooh, I can't stand that they've used that too much? Or how about this one? Do you care if you see Comic Sans? If someone's used it in a billboard or a poster and you see it and you're like, I can't stand that. So if you've developed opinions about fonts, if you notice and you pay attention, you are a graphic designer. Like I say, the average person, they might see that and go, well, I really don't care. I don't have an opinion for or against. But we do develop opinions, and it's okay to have an opinion about fonts. Here's something I found. Comic Sans plus papyrus. Somebody actually did this, and they made comic papyrus. Can you believe it? Ah, the ultimate unholy font ever created. Do you care about style? Do you have an opinion about whether or not to use serifs or sans serifs? Do you think about it? Is there a right or wrong to that question? Are there times when you should use a serif font and you should not use a serif font? Or are there times when you should always use sans serif? If you've developed an answer to that question, or you have an opinion, you're a graphic designer. Do you care about the style of lettering? You know, just like this example here, you see all these names and these different handwritten styles. They all say something a little bit different. Just like a person has a different personality, fonts have personalities too. And every little variation makes it just a little bit different. Makes it stand out, makes it interesting, makes it recognizable. So if you can perceive that and you see that and you recognize that, you're definitely a graphic designer. Is there a right, wrong, or correct way to use display fonts? Is there a time when you should use handwritten versus script? Does it change the meaning? Does it change the effectiveness of the design? Yeah, it kind of does. So you really need to know when and why to use those typefaces. How about this? Do you care about color? Do you care about how it's used? Color matters. Just as much as anything else in graphic design, color is essential. It isn't something that just randomly happens, that you just happen to pick a swatch from your swatch palette, or you just happen to say, oh, I want this to be bold and bright, so I'm gonna use yellow. You know, that's not how we do it. We need to coordinate our color. We need to pay attention to when and why to use those colors. We need to limit our color choices. We don't want to use every color. We only want to use some of the colors. And we definitely want to make sure that we're using the colors that work together, not the ones that conflict with each other. Color plays as much a role in creating interesting type and effective design as anything else. So if you can see that, if you pay attention to that, you're definitely a graphic designer. If you ignore that and you really don't care, you know, maybe you ought to find a different kind of work. Do you care about spacing? This is something that a lot of people kind of ignore and overlook, but does it bother you? Are you just a little bit OCD about letter spacing? Can you see in this example the distance between the O and the D or the R and the N? And does it bother you? You know, it's a little bit OCD, I admit. You worry about these little spacing issues. You think about it. You want to fix it. You want to go up and squeeze it together. That means you're a graphic designer. Spacing is critical. Obviously, in this example, it wasn't done very well, and it changes the entire meaning of that business. How about this one? Another fail. Maybe if someone had paid attention to the kerning, the letter spacing, could have avoided an expensive fix. Do you care about scale? Scale matters, especially in relationship to other sizing issues inside of a type design. You know, when something is clashing and there are too many different styles and spacing and sizing issues going on, it makes it confusing and ugly and, you know, really hard to read. In this example, it's a bolder font, very poor spacing, bad scale, can't read it. We need to make sure we understand when, why, and how to use spacing and size and scale so that our type actually works. If we just accept what happens to come out of the typewriter or the keyboard, I mean, it's a problem. How about this? You can tell this sign was not crafted by a graphic designer. It was made by somebody who just happened to have letters of particular size and put them together. All caps, fish factory. You know, what are we emphasizing by scaling the letters this way? We're definitely not emphasizing what we want to emphasize. It's not working. We look at it and we almost think that those are abbreviations for something. That's how our mind works. We try to find meaning when we see things at different sizes and scales, but this is unintentional. So it just looks amateurish and ugly. How about this one? This was definitely designed by a nerd who had no appreciation for typefaces, fonts, color, scale, sizing, anything. They just kind of threw it together and picked whatever color happened to be in the color palette, had a big, large block of text they needed to fit in a small space, and they threw it in there. And hard to read, hard to understand, pretty much ineffective in working as a flyer to attract your attention. Unless you're trying to attract nerds. Maybe that's what this is going to do. So what does this all mean? It means that good design is obvious, great design is invisible, said Joe Sperano. When effective design is done really, really well, we can appreciate it, but a lot of times we don't notice the tricks and tools they used. It's because it was done really well. The beauty of type lies in its utility. Prettiness without readability serves neither the author nor the reader. So what does that mean? We need to have kind of a combination of form and function. The type should be pretty, but it should also be readable and legible and useful. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. Typography is an art. Good typography is art, said Paul Rand. I love that. Good typography is art. And that's what we're dealing with. It's an art form. We're artists. We're type artists. We put things together for a reason, to make them better than we found them. And that's what this is all about. So hopefully that gives you a little idea of what good type design is and why we care about it and how you can use it to make yours a little more effective. See you later.